Over 600 people have died and many more injured as a powerful earthquake shook Morocco overnight. India's Prime Minister announces that the African Union will join the G20 as the Leaders' Summit gets underway in New Delhi.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky urges world leaders to resume their sanctions offensive against Russia. Josep Borrell says Georgia still has work to do to join the European Union, following its application for candidate status last year.
Over 600 people have died and more than 300 are injured after a powerful earthquake hit Morocco overnight on Friday, near the western city of Marrakesh. Data from the US Geological Survey said the quake had a preliminary magnitude of 6.8 when it hit. This was followed by a 4.9 aftershock 19 minutes later. Video footage posted online also shows damage to parts of the famous red walls which surrounded the old city in Marrakesh, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi kicked off day one of the G20 summit in New Delhi by announcing that the African Union will be the latest member to join the group, adding momentum to his drive to give a greater voice to the global south. The announcement comes as growing global rifts and the absence of key players threaten to make reaching consensus on the thorniest issues elusive. This year, neither Russia's Vladimir Putin nor China's Xi Jinping decided to attend in person, sending representatives in their names. There was widespread support, however, for adding the AU to the G20, making it the second regional bloc to become a permanent member after the European Union. The US and the UK tried to encourage India to take an active diplomatic approach towards Russia, while the EU stressed global food security issues directly connected to the war in Ukraine.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Friday urged world leaders to resume their sanctions offensive against Russia. Zelensky said allies had eased up on punitive measures against Moscow and called for further pressure on the Kremlin's finances.
Зараз бачимо надто довгу санкційну паузу з боку партнерів і надто активні спроби Росії обійти санкції. Цей санкційний наступ світу має відновитись.
Meanwhile, Ukraine's leader has also repeated calls for Western arms deliveries, stressing that Moscow's aerial superiority was stunting Kyiv's counter-offensive. Elsewhere, the Kremlin claims to have repelled multiple attacks along the front line, and the governor of Ukraine's Kherson region reports at least 3 people were killed in Russian strikes. The EU's top diplomat, Josep Borrell, made his first official visit on Friday to Georgia, which applied for EU candidate status last year. Borrell said Georgia belongs in the EU, but warned its foreign policy should be in full accordance with Brussels.
Never ever say we have been abandoned by the European Union. This is something that I cannot accept. But at the same time, I have to say that adhesion is a merit-based process. And you have to fulfill certain conditions, and it's up to you.
For the Georgian Prime Minister, his country deserves candidate status, but the EU is asking the Georgian government to do more. Borrell's visit to Georgia coincides with the 15th anniversary of the EU monitoring mission, which observes the Russian occupation line established after the 2008 Russia-Georgia war. Before leaving, Borrell personally visited the occupation line to observe the work carried out by the mission. France got off to a winning start at this year's Rugby World Cup as they beat New Zealand 27-13 in the opening game at the Stade de France in Paris. Both teams are among the favourites to win the tournament, but it was the All Blacks who were the first to break the deadlock. New Zealand's Mark Talia scored after just 93 seconds after latching on to a Bowden Barrett kick. Thousands of supporters gathered in fan parks across France to watch the action, and they were spurred on by solid kicking from Thomas Ramos and tries from Penaud and Jaminet.